Welcome, traveler. Come closer and sit by the scroll. You haven't crossed mountains or rivers, and yet here you are, in a room untouched by time. The wind brushes the shutters softly. Even it pauses now. What's written here was never for spectacle, only for remembrance. Let your shoulders ease, your eyes soften, and your breath settle. Begin when you're ready. The scroll remembers all. Sometimes it is the places where little is said that speak the loudest, and there are lands where the fog itself seems to listen. High in the green shoulders of Northern Laos, nestled among the folds of the Annamite Mountains, there is a quiet world where morning is not simply a time, but a presence. The year is not marked by emperors or wars here, but by the softness of soil after rain, the sound of bamboo bending in wind, the scent of wood smoke rising into a pale sky. It is the early 1800s in the highlands where the Hmong people have lived for generations beyond count. They do not build palaces, nor seek the favor of distant kings. Their world is carved from mountain earth and silence, a world of rivers that whisper and trails worn smooth by bare feet. A world where belief is not written in books, but carried in breath, in thread, in song. At dawn, before the sun breaks fully over the ridgelines, mist coils through the valleys like a slow-moving spirit. It clings to the rooftops of thatched homes, swirls through the tall grasses, and rests gently on the shoulders of those who wake early to tend to the fields. The fog here is not feared, it is familiar. It is said to be the breath of the ancestors, watching, listening, remembering. The homes are simple, built from timber and bamboo, raised slightly from the earth. Smoke drifts lazily from open rooftops where morning fires warm pots of rice and stir fragrant broths. Inside, mothers weave dyed hemp thread into indigo cloth, their hands moving with patience, repeating patterns learned from grandmothers long gone. Fathers sharpen blades or prepare snares, while children gather firewood, giggling when they think no one hears. Life follows the mountain's pace, slow, deliberate, respectful. Fields of maize and poppies are tended with care, but never rushed. Spirits are greeted before planting and thanked before harvest. In every act, something sacred is near. Altars of smooth stone and simple offerings, a chicken feather, a sliver of rice cake, line the village paths, reminders that the world one sees is not the only one that lives. The Hmong speak softly and rarely without purpose. Words are precious, much like breath in the cold air. Their myths travel not in scrolls or stone, but in stories told by elders beside cooking fires. Tales of sky-born brothers, spirit trees, and journeys guided by dreams. Stories that do not seek to explain, only to remember. At the center of village life stands the soul-calling ceremony. When illness lingers or fortune fades, a shaman is summoned. Clad in embroidered robes, he chants through bone pipes and bronze bells, guiding his spirit through unseen realms to find what has been lost. A soul wandered, a bond broken. The villagers gather quietly, their eyes closed, listening not just to the sounds but to what lies beneath them. In such a place, even silence is a kind of song. But the stillness of this land holds more than daily rhythms. There is a deeper silence, shaped not only by fog, but by the mountains themselves. They rise like waves frozen in time, watching, breathing, waiting. And within them, the Hmong have found a home woven from more than earth and stone. Next, mountains woven from breath. The Laos highlands cradle the Hmong people, in a silence that has shaped their stories for generations. In these mountains, where the air is thin and the valleys curl like sleeping serpents, the Hmong people have lived for generations. Their homes rest on ridges above the clouds, their lives folded into the rhythm of soil and season, of fire and thread. The mountains do not speak, but they listen. They have listened for centuries. Each breath of the villagers becomes part of the mountain's breath. Each footstep in the damp earth is like a note in an old lullaby. And in these hills, silence is not absence. It is presence. It is fullness. It is the sound of the ancestors still sitting by the fire. At dawn, a mother might draw water from the stream with hands that have known both labor and lullabies. The bamboo ladle creaks in her grasp. Her child stirs behind the thatched wall, wrapped in cloth dyed from indigo and bark. The wind carries the smell of wood smoke and simmering rice, and with it, a quiet hum. A song passed from one generation to the next, not to entertain, but to remember. The Hmong do not write their history with ink, they sew it. Needles thread through hemp cloth with careful rhythm. Blue, red, black. Each color a tale, each pattern a prayer. A swirl might recall a journey across rivers. A diamond may speak of a village long gone. A row of broken lines could mark the loss of a child or the movement of the moon. Their embroidery is more than craft. It is memory made visible. It is how the women carry what cannot be spoken. It is how they shield themselves from forgetting. And in the hush of dusk, when the hills turn violet and the chickens quiet, an old man may place his pipe aside and whisper a tale of spirits who live in stones, of dream walkers who pass between worlds, of how once, long ago, the ancestors walked out of China with nothing but songs in their mouths. These stories are not written in books. They live in breath, they live in cloth, they live in silence. But the silence is not empty. It is full of footsteps, of harvests of longing. It is full of names that no longer have faces, but are still spoken in the prayers before sleep. And so, a mountain becomes more than a place. It becomes a keeper of stories, of grief, of pride, of love that does not need to shout. What became of those who could no longer return? What happens to a people when their memory is not on paper, but in thread? And the thread is torn? The answer is not simple. But the mountains remember. They always do. But memory does not stop at the mountain's edge. It continues, drifting down narrow paths, coiling through the mist like incense, settling gently at the doorway of a home. In the highlands, a village does not shout its presence. It emerges softly from the fog, as if it has always been there. Not built, but remembered. The houses are simple, wooden planks darkened by rain, roofs thatched thick with grass and bound by time. No grand gates, no stone courtyards, just humble thresholds that carry more meaning than they show. For here, a home is not only for the living, it is a vessel for the unseen. Step inside and you will find more than cooking pots and sleeping mats. You will feel something quieter, a weight in the air, not heavy, but full. Every beam, every post holds a memory, a birth, a wedding, a whispered vow, a bowl passed from hand to hand, a child's laughter that once echoed here and still somehow does. Above the hearth, blackened by years of smoke, hangs a strip of bamboo or a string of silver coins. This is the ancestor altar, small but sacred. It does not ask for much. A bowl of rice, a few drops of tea, a murmur of gratitude. The ancestors do not need shrines of gold. They ask only to be remembered, to be spoken to as if they have just stepped outside and will return soon. And in these homes, they are never far. It is said that the walls themselves breathe with memory, that the rafters bend ever so slightly under the weight of old names, that when the wind moves through a house, it is not wind at all, but a grandfather checking in, a sister passing through, a child who left too early brushing past in play. When a baby is born, the elders place rice at the door and call softly into the corners of the room, inviting the spirits to witness the beginning. When someone passes, they do not leave alone. They are sung to, washed, and guided gently through the same doorway they once crawled through as a child. This is the circle, not drawn with ink, but walked with feet, marked not by walls, but by presence. In the morning, as mist curls around the eaves, a woman may sweep the floor, not just for dust, but to make space, for clarity, for peace, for those who still live here, though unseen. And as the fire is lit and the pot begins to boil, there is comfort in knowing that the house holds more than warmth. It holds the ones who came before. It holds the stories they left in the grain of the wood, the cracks in the floor, the hush in the rafters. And just beyond the doorway, past the wooden beams and swept earth, the mist waits, soft and silver, neither guest nor stranger. It is always there, always listening. To some, fog is only weather, a trick of air and water. But here, in the folds of the Laos highlands, the mist is something more. It is a threshold. It is a bridge. In Hmong belief, the fog is not a veil. It is a path, a corridor where spirits walk without sound, where dreams drift in from other realms, and where the breath of the ancestors still moves through the trees. In the hush of early morning, when the hills wear their shroud of white, you may hear it, a distant flute, the thrum of footsteps with no form, a name spoken with no mouth. Not every sound is made by the living. The elders say that spirits are shy. They do not shout. They whisper through the fog, choosing the moments carefully, at dawn, at dusk, or in that quiet space between waking and sleep. It is why the old songs rise with the morning mist, why the shaman begins his chant only after the fog has settled thick. The veil is thin then, the world is open, messages can pass. In these moments the past feels near, not gone, just stepped aside. Sometimes when a child cries in her sleep, the mother does not shake her awake. She listens. She places her hand over the child's heart, softly humming an old melody, one that calls the spirit back gently, for it may have wandered too far into dream. Dreams, too, are not mere shadows of the mind. They are journeys, communions. To dream of a river may be to receive a warning. To meet a grandmother in a forest is not just memory. It is visit. It is presence. This is why the fog is not feared. It is revered. It is a bearer of voices, a kind of messenger. It cloaks the forest not in silence, but in mystery. The shaman may step into the fog with nothing but a bell and a bundle of herbs. He walks not to get lost, but to find something, a soul gone wandering, a message still unfinished, a rift that must be mended with chant and fire and breath. And so the fog carries more than dew. It carries longing. It carries memory. It carries those words we never had the courage to say, those names we dare not speak aloud. And when the mist has thinned, and the smoke of morning meals rises steady from the rooftops, the village stirs. not just in body, but in memory. For within these quiet homes, something ancient still burns. The hut is modest, walls of split bamboo stitched with vine, a roof thick with thatch, soft and golden as dried rice stalks. Inside, the fire speaks in little cracks and sighs, and the breath of those gathered lingers in the air, warm and slow. This is not just a place to rest, it is a chamber of remembrance. In the hush between chores and twilight, children gather close to the hearth, knees tucked beneath cloth, their eyes wide as the world beyond. Beside them sits an elder, a grandmother with silver threaded through her hair, a father whose voice carries the rhythm of the hills. And slowly the telling begins. Not in shouts or spectacle, but in murmurs, in pauses, in silences filled with awe. They speak of the Neeb, the shamans, those who walk between worlds, whose bodies are human, but whose spirits drift far. The child leans forward as they hear of the boy who first fell ill, not from sickness of flesh, but of calling. He trembled not with fever, but with visions. He could see what others could not, hear the names of herbs spoken by the trees, feel the pull of unseen winds that whispered of healing. The Neeb do not choose their path, it is chosen for them. Sometimes, in the middle of a storm, a future shaman will wander into the woods, guided by a force not even he understands, and when he returns, his voice is lower, his eyes deeper. He has walked with spirits. The elders pass these stories gently, as one might pass a glowing coal, carefully, with reverence. For the Neeb are not just healers, they are bridges. They speak to ancestors in trance, travel to spirit realms to retrieve lost souls, chant the names of herbs that no book records. They wear no crown, but their presence humbles. Even the wind seems to step aside when they walk. In the quiet of the hut, the child asks softly, "Can anyone become a Neeb?" The elder smiles, but does not answer directly. She only looks to the fire and says, "If they call you, you will know." The spirits do not shout, but they do not whisper twice. And when the fire fades low, and even the cicadas have fallen silent, there is one last breath before sleep takes hold. A breath not of the body, but of the soul, preparing to walk. In Hmong belief, the night is not a time of forgetting. It is a time of crossing. When the eyes close and the body grows still, another part of us begins to move. The soul, they say, untethers, quietly, gently, like a boat slipping from its mooring and drifting into a river only it can see. Dreams are not flickers of imagination. They are journeys, real ones, to places hidden from waking sight, to realms shaped by spirit and shadow. The villagers speak of 9 souls within the body, each with its own task, its own rhythm. But one, just one, is the traveler, the one who leaves while the others sleep. If you dream of a mountain you've never seen, or speak with someone long departed, if you wake with the scent of rain, though none has fallen, or feel the weight of sorrow not your own, it may be that your soul wandered and brought something back. This is why sleep is sacred, not just for rest, but for reunion. A time when the soul may visit old ancestors, receive warnings, gather healing, or glimpse a path not yet walked. And it is also why dreams are not dismissed. They are studied, retold, passed from child to elder like messages delivered by birds. Last night I saw a gate of fire, one might whisper, and the elders will nod, searching the meaning in their memory. But sometimes the soul does not return. The body stirs at dawn, but something is missing. The gaze unfocused, the spirit, dimmed. The elders call it soul loss, a quiet absence, a thread snapped in sleep. In such times the shaman is called. He prepares the ritual gently, cloth dyed deep blue, herbs crushed under moonlight, bells and breath, songs sung not to ears, but to the winds that carry souls home. With each chant, the soul is beckoned. With each movement of the hand, a path is laid. And if the call is true, it returns. Slowly, reluctantly, like a bird unsure it remembers the way. What if our own dreams held more than confusion or fancy? What if they were messages, not to be analyzed, but honored? Perhaps each night we do not just sleep, but sail. Perhaps the soul is never idle, only waiting for darkness and silence and the soft invitation of the unseen. In sleep, the soul knows things the body dares not say. There comes a night, quiet, yes, but different. The air stills too deeply. The dogs do not bark, and the wind forgets the path it once followed. It begins with a dream, sometimes just a flicker, a gate that will not open, a fire burning downward into the ground, a river darker than night, moving without sound. These are not symbols to be puzzled over. They are signs, clear as breath against cold glass. To dream such things is to be touched by the edge of something final, a threshold not of land or sleep, but of life itself. The elders do not speak of it lightly. When such visions come, they do not cry out. They begin to prepare, not with fear, but with reverence. They wash their hands with sacred herbs. They hang white cloth outside the home, gentle and fluttering like the last breaths of a season. A chicken may be offered, not as sacrifice, but as a companion for the departing soul, so it does not walk alone. For the Hmong do not see death as a severing. It is a return, a passage. And yet, a passage must be recognized, honored, escorted with dignity. Sometimes the one who dreams such signs awakens and says nothing, but their silence is known. They speak less, walk slower, as if already listening to voices beyond the ridge. They may sit by the fire longer than usual, gazing into it not for warmth, but for remembrance. And when the final dream comes, they are ready. They have gathered their spirit. They have said what need not be spoken aloud. Then the shaman is summoned not to heal, but to guide. With chants steady and soft, he traces the soul's path with his breath, carving invisible roads through the veil. Not to hold death back, but to meet it as one would meet an honored guest. The family prepares the body with care, wrapping it in cloth that tells its story, placing rice, coins, and words beside the still hands. The journey is long, and the soul must not travel hungry. This is the moment when mist becomes boundary, when silence becomes farewell. But it is not a break, it is a bending, of time, of spirit, of memory. What if we could listen for these signs in our own lives, not to chase them in fear, but to live in such a way that when the night does come, we are not startled, but still, grateful, and ready to return to where the soul began. And once the soul has set foot upon that final path, there is only one who can speak its language, not with words of man, but with the breath of fire and the voice of spirit. The shaman is not born with robes or titles. They are not chosen by men. They are chosen by something far older and far more demanding. Often it begins with suffering. A young child grows ill, not of body, but of soul. No remedy soothes the trembling. No prayer quiets the fever. They speak of strangers in dreams, of stairways that vanish, of being pulled by a river no one else can see. The family weeps, the elders gather, and then one whispers, "The spirits are calling." For the Hmong know this illness well. It is the mark of calling, a sacred sickness, sent not to punish, but to awaken. If the child survives, they do not return the same. Their eyes see in layers. Their sleep is pierced with visions. They begin the long, quiet apprenticeship to become a neeb, a shaman. This training is not written, it is remembered. They learn the way the wind moves when a soul has wandered. They memorize the voices of herbs crushed beneath stone. They study the shape of chicken bones tossed into a sacred bowl, reading not the bone itself, but the shadow it casts upon the future. But above all, they learn to speak with fire. For fire does not lie. Its crackle is a song of truth. In trance, the shaman enters the flame, not with flesh, but with spirit. Eyes rolled back, body swaying, they journey into the unseen, guided only by drum, bell, and the steady thread of their breath. They return with messages. This soul is lost between two mountains. This child's spirit has been taken by an ancestor. This sickness is not of this world. They do not explain, they interpret, they do not command. They plead, they bargain, they guide. A shaman walks the narrowest of bridges, feet in the village, voice in the clouds. At once healer, historian, and protector of balance. And yet, they carry no pride, only the weight of their knowing, and the burden of walking always at the edge of things. What if such roles still held meaning among us? Not as mystics lost on the past, but as keepers of the unseen, as those who remind us that illness is not always physical, and healing, not always found in hands. Perhaps we too need those who can listen to the silence, read the wind, and speak with fire. And so, there can be dreams that linger, dreams that will not fade with dawn, but cling to the soul like mist on the mountain trees, dreams that whisper, something is not right. When such dreams come, dark rivers, sealed gates, voices without mouths, the family does not wait. They call for the tuam ceeb, not a ritual for the eyes, but for the soul, not to fix the body, but to listen deeply, to the dream itself. The shaman prepares in silence. The altar is swept, the air cleared with smoke from crushed herbs, sweet, bitter, sacred. At the center of the room, a low wooden bench. Beside it, a chicken, a gourd of water, a single drum. Then the shaman begins. The chant is not loud, it is not for the living. It is for the spirit world, for the ancestors who wait beyond the veil, for the soul who may have drifted too far in sleep. The drum beats slow, then steady, then fast, like hooves galloping through mist. The sound does not fill the room, it pierces it, calling, beckoning, unraveling the dream. The shaman's voice rises and falls, naming places unseen, the bridge of bamboo, the house with no doors, the black dog who stands at the eastern gate. Each vision is a sign, each image a map. Through the tuam ceeb, illness may reveal itself as a spirit forgotten, or a promise broken long ago, a misstep in ritual, a soul frightened by sorrow, too afraid to return. And sometimes, the dream speaks of endings, a farewell wrapped in symbol, the final shadow before departure. In such moments the shaman does not resist. They guide with calm hands. They prepare offerings for the journey. They remind the family this is not the end, only the next village. The tuam ceeb is not just healing. It is translation. It is remembrance. It is the act of treating dreams not as dust, but as doors. To ignore such dreams would be like leaving a traveler lost in the forest, calling their name only once, then forgetting they ever walked away. Perhaps the soul remembers, perhaps it has always remembered, and all it waits for is a drumbeat, a voice, and the silence to be heard. Now, shamans also made offerings, rice, silver, and chants, to calm the spirits and thin the boundary between this world and the next. And once the dream has spoken, once the path is glimpsed through shadow and symbol, the air shifts, as if something just beyond has begun to listen. This is when the shaman begins to prepare the veil, not with fear, not with haste, but with the same care one gives to the dressing of a wound or the sending of a letter to someone far away. The spirits must be met with respect. They are not to be summoned like servants, but invited, as guests older than time. The shaman lays out the offerings first, a small bowl of steamed rice, still warm, a sliver of silver gleaming softly in the firelight, and sometimes just a few threads of cloth, white, pure, untouched. Each item has its purpose. Rice for nourishment, for even the unseen grow hungry. Silver for honor, for spirits recognize truth in the shine of metal. And cloth to signal purity, a promise that what passes between worlds is done with clear hands. Then comes the chant. It's not rushed. It unfolds like smoke, curling through the air, layer by layer. A low voice at first, then rising, carrying names, asking permission, offering peace. The veil is not torn open. It is thinned, slowly, deliberately, until the two worlds begin to touch, like the meeting of mist and mountain. The wind grows still, the animals fall silent, and all who sit nearby feel it. That hush, not of absence but of presence. The space becomes sacred, not because of what is seen, but because of what is near. The shaman closes their eyes. They listen not with ears, but with breath. Sometimes a bell is rung, sometimes only the crackle of fire remains. And in that stillness, they wait for the spirits to answer. A feeling may pass through the room, cool as river water, or sudden warmth on the skin. The flicker of a shadow that no flame has cast. A voice, half remembered, not quite dream, not quite thought. It is the veil responding. It is the ancestors arriving, and all things slow. For this moment, this sacred crossing, is the beginning of all healing, and sometimes of all farewells. And once the veil has softened, once the air has stilled, and the breath of the ancestors lingers, the dream is not left behind. It is returned to, carefully, gently, like a broken tapestry ready to be mended. The shaman does not rush. Their voice is low, steady as water tracing stone. Each word is a hand reaching into the fog, pulling forth a fragment. A gate left open, a mountain with no peak, a dog with human eyes. The dream is not retold as story, it is re-entered, and it does not come all at once. It comes in pieces, like strands of hemp lifted from a loom. Each image is a thread, and the shaman is the weaver. They ask questions without speaking. Where did the soul go? Who did it meet? What did it leave behind? The answers do not come in language. They arrive as sensation, a weight in the chest, a scent remembered too vividly, a sudden tremble of the hands. The shaman reads these signs as one might read wind in a field of rice, not by sight, but by motion. They chant not to explain, but to uncover. With each rhythm, the dream loosens, its knots unravel, the symbols begin to reveal themselves. A black river may mean grief unspoken. A path overgrown might point to a forgotten ancestor. A bird trapped in a home may speak of a soul unwilling to return. And so, the shaman chants on, drawing these meanings from silence, not inventing, remembering. Around them the family sits in stillness, watching not the shaman, but the flicker of their own memories. For this ceremony is not spectacle, it is participation. The dream, once private, is now communal. What was hidden in one heart is brought into the warmth of many hands. And when the final thread is placed, when the images no longer shift like smoke, but rest like stones in clear water, there is clarity. Not always comfort, but understanding. And from understanding, the first steps of healing. And when the last thread is laid, when the dream has given all it can, the fire grows quieter, the drum is still, and a hush settles, not of waiting, but of knowing. The shaman sits with the weight of what has been seen. They do not speak right away. The veil may have thinned, but truth must cross slowly. Their eyes are distant, as if still standing halfway between this world and the next, as if still listening to voices we cannot hear. Then, softly, the verdict comes. Sometimes it is light. The soul has wandered, they say. It needs calling home. A ritual is arranged, a thread tied at the wrist, a meal shared with the ancestors, a song sung at dawn to remind the spirit of its name. And sometimes, the news carries weight. The path is closing. The soul is ready to go. No fear follows these words. Only silence, only breath. For in Hmong belief, death is not defeat. It is a journey, and journeys must be prepared for. The shaman does not deliver the verdict like a sentence. They offer it like a lantern, a gentle light for the road ahead. If the soul is to heal, they speak of balance to restore, wrongs to make right, spirits to appease, the rhythm of life to bring back in tune. But if the soul is to depart, they begin the work of farewell. White cloth is hung. The body, when its time comes, will be bathed in sacred water. Coins placed near the feet to pay the tolls of unseen rivers. Names whispered to remind the soul of where it came from and where it is going. The shaman chants not to hold it back, but to guide it forward. And the family, though heavy with sorrow, moves with care. For this is not a loss, it is an honoring. To know a soul's fate is not a curse. It is a clarity few are given, a chance to walk the final steps not in confusion, but in grace. What if we too learned to hear the quiet verdicts within us? The dreams that ask for change, the feelings that call for return, the whispers that say, it is time to let go. Perhaps not every door is meant to stay open. Perhaps even the closing of a gate is a gift, when spoken with gentleness and lit by the soft voice of one who has walked both sides of the veil. And once the soul's path is known, whether to stay or begin its long return, the work of binding begins, not with chains, but with thread, not to trap, but to hold. In the Hmong way, the body is not alone. It is the house of many souls, and when one wanders too far, ritual becomes the rope that draws it gently home. The shaman begins with the cords, threads of white, red, or yellow, dyed by root and sun, blessed with breath. They are tied around the wrist, looped 3 times, then knotted with quiet intent. One knot for the body, one for the spirit, one for the memory of who they truly are. These threads are not decoration, they are protection, a spiritual tether, so the soul, even if it drifts, will always find its way back. Then comes the garment, not woven in haste, but embroidered with symbols, curled lines for journey, sharp angles for strength, and swirling flowers for harmony with the unseen. When worn, the garment speaks. To the ancestors, to the forest, to the air itself. It says, this one is guarded, this one is known, and incense is lit, not for fragrance, but for memory. The smoke rises in slow spirals, curling like the paths the soul once took, reaching upward, calling gently to those who came before. The shaman whispers names into the smoke. Grandmothers, warriors, lost children, spirit guides. Those who walk unseen but never far. To you who remember this soul, they say, come now and bless the thread. And they come. You cannot see them, but you feel them. A sudden stillness in the air, a warmth on the cheek, the flicker of a flame with no wind to touch it. The ancestors do not arrive with thunder. They arrive like memory, soft, unexpected, and unmistakable. And with their blessing, the cords are sealed. The garment pressed to the heart, the smoke waved toward the four corners of the world. Now the soul is no longer lost. It is held, not by force, but by love and lineage and the old sacred ways. And when the cords are tied, and the soul has been gathered like rain into the waiting earth, a deeper truth begins to show itself. Not in words, but in the quiet arrangement of all things. In the Hmong way of seeing, life and death are not enemies. They are not gates that swing in opposite directions, nor chasms to leap across. They are forests, two forests, vast, sacred, and filled with unseen life. And between them winds a path, not straight, not marked, but there, woven with moonlight and memory, threaded with dreams, and walked by every soul in its time. To live is to walk the forest of sunlight, where bamboo creaks in the wind, where children laugh beneath palm roofs, where rice grows in terraces curved like a mother's hand. It is where breath is visible, where food is shared, where stories gather like dew each morning. But to die is not to vanish. It is only to step into the other forest, the one draped in mist, where the ancestors tend invisible fires, where names still echo through the trees, spoken softly by those who remember. This is why the path between them is never feared. It is walked with reverence, with offerings tied to each wrist and songs sung beneath each step. The shaman knows this trail well. They walk it in trance and dream, guiding the soul so it does not stray, so it does not wander into the shadowed hills and forget the way forward. They carry no weapons, only chants, threads, and firelight. And when a loved one crosses into the far forest, those left behind do not wail into silence. They speak the name again and again, to guide the spirit, to keep it warm. Because the forests are not far, their roots touch beneath the earth. Their winds often mingle at dusk. It is said that sometimes, on a still night, you can hear the ancestors walking the border, rustling the leaves, calling the names of their grandchildren, watching over the fields they once planted. And when the final signs are no longer questioned, when the gate stays shut in every dream, and the body's breath begins to loosen its grip, the work becomes not to heal, but to honor. In the Hmong tradition, death is not a rupture, it is a return, a turning of the spirit toward the path it always knew, but was not yet ready to follow. And when that moment comes, when the soul begins to gather its belongings for the journey, the shaman is called not to fight it, but to guide it. There is no panic, no clashing of prayers, only the slow, steady sound of a chant carried on breath. The shaman sits near the departing one, their voice low and rhythmic, like water slipping over worn stone. They do not ask the soul to stay. They speak to it like an old friend, reminding it where to go, what to bring, and who waits on the other side. They chant the names of the ancestors, inviting them to meet the traveler. They chant the steps of the road so the soul will not be lost in shadow. They chant the offerings prepared, the food, the coins, the cloth, that the journey may be smooth and without hunger. The words are not meant to change fate. They are meant to soften it. For in these final hours, it is not the shaman's power that matters, but their presence, their knowing, their ability to make the world feel held. Outside the home, the village moves slowly. Neighbors light small fires. Children speak in whispers. A chicken is offered, not in grief, but in guidance. A companion for the soul, something familiar in the unknown, and inside the air is thick with quiet, not heavy, but sacred. The soul does not rush, it lingers, listening. And with each chant, a step is taken, away from pain, away from confusion, toward a place of welcome. For the Hmong believe no soul departs alone. It is always met, always received. By those whose names we still carry, whose stories we still whisper, whose footsteps we still walk within. What if we saw death not as a vanishing, but as a homecoming? What if we chanted not out of fear, but out of love, so that when our time came, we too would hear familiar voices in the dark? Perhaps the gentlest parting is the one prepared with care, with song, and with the quiet faith that no one ever truly walks alone. And when the last chant fades, and the soul has crossed gently into the other forest, the flame does not go out, it simply changes hearth. In the Hmong hearth world, death does not close a life, it completes a circle. And what remains behind is not silence, but warmth. For every soul that departs does not disappear. It becomes a part of the great current, a river of memory that flows beyond the veil, always near, always listening. The ancestors are not a distant past, they are a living presence. They sit at the corners of the room, invisible but felt. Their names are spoken beside bowls of rice, their stories told with laughter by firelight, their footsteps echoed in every ritual, every cord tied, every breath offered to the wind. To live as Hmong is to walk with one foot in the village and the other in the realm of spirit. And the fires they tend, those sacred hearth of the other world, are kept alive by what we do here. When incense is lit, it does not vanish into smoke. It rises as signal, as greeting, as remembrance. When a newborn is named, the ancestors are called to witness, to bless, to protect, to whisper old strength into small lungs. And during times of sorrow or sickness, it is to them we turn. Not out of desperation, but because they are family, still present, still invested. Each generation becomes another branch in the great tree, another stone in the quiet wall that guards the village of the living. Even the tools they left behind, a knife, a scarf, a drum, are not just heirlooms, they are thresholds, carriers of their touch, their scent, their silence. And so the fire does not fade. It burns behind the veil in a world that mirrors this one, of homes and hills, of songs and smoke, of people who once breathed here and still do, in another form. What if we lived knowing we were never alone? That each step we take is already shadowed by those who came before, not watching from above, but walking beside us? Perhaps then we would move more slowly, speak more carefully, and hold each moment as something sacred, lit by the ancestral fires that never ever fade. And though the world beyond grows louder, faster, hungry for lights and towers, there are still places where time moves by firelight, and faith is not spoken, but lived. Far from the highways, beyond the humming of wires and the glare of cities, a single hut sits at the edge of a mountain path. Its walls are bamboo, its roof thatch, its door always open to wind. Inside there is no shrine of gold, no glass, no painted icons, only breath, only belief, and that is enough. The shaman kneels on the packed earth floor. Beside him, a mother holds her sleeping child, and a grandfather leans on a worn wooden cane. The only light comes from the fire, crackling softly, casting shadows that dance like spirits returned. There are no cameras here, no recordings, only memory. What happens in this room is not for show, it is for balance. For the world, though wide and restless, still turns on the smallest of hinges. A thread tied at the wrist. A chant repeated until the bones remember. A bowl of rice placed with both hands, not out of custom, but because it matters. The spirits do not need temples. They come when called with sincerity, with stillness, with care. And so the ceremony begins. A child's sickness, an elder's dream, a family's prayer whispered through tears. The shaman listens, not with questions, but with presence. He knows the winds that pass through this village. He knows which trees are sacred, which stones carry memory, which songs open the veil. Each movement is slow, intentional. A bell rings, smoke curls, words are spoken not to impress, but to invoke. Outside, the mist gathers at the edge of the hills. The chickens roost, the stars begin to blink awake. And inside the hut, the world holds together. Not with walls, but with trust, not with force, but with ritual, not with answers, but with attention. And when the fire burns low, and the chant has faded into breath, only one thing remains, the dream, not as a warning nor a wound, but as a gift left gently behind. In the Hmong way, dreams are never just visions. They are bridges. They are messages wrapped in mist. And when a soul has walked its final path, the dream it leaves behind becomes part of the living. It may linger in silence, in the corner of a hut, in the rustle of bamboo before dawn, in the sudden memory of a voice long gone. It stays, because dreams do not vanish when the dreamer departs. They seed the ground for those who remain. Sometimes the dream is retold, not once, but many times passed from mouth to mouth like a sacred story. She saw a river, wide and black, but crossed it calmly. He walked into a house made of stars, and the door closed softly behind him. An old woman handed her a cup and said nothing, but smiled. The dream becomes parable. It becomes comfort. And quietly, it becomes instruction, not in the way of rules, but in the way of remembering what matters, to speak with kindness, to leave a place cleaner than you found it, to honor the unseen, to live so that your own dream, when it comes, will need no words to explain itself. These dreams are woven into the fabric of daily life. A child grows and is told, "You carry your grandmother's dream in your hands." A harvest succeeds, and someone says, "It is because your grandfather still watches from the other side." And so the dream does not rest in sleep. It breathes in the waking world, in decisions made, in rituals kept, in moments of stillness where the air feels full of something not quite nameable. Even in sorrow, the dream offers grace. For it teaches that death is not the end, and love does not stay behind. It travels, it transforms. It teaches quietly how to let go with dignity and how to hold on with gentleness. What if we treated the dreams of the dying this way? Not with dread, but with reverence? What if we listened to their symbols and walked with their meaning as if they were lanterns lit just far enough ahead to show us how to live? Perhaps then we would see that even in parting, the soul leaves behind one last offering, a story to guide the living into grace. The dream has quieted now. Its final thread has been tied, its last image folded like cloth into the memory of night. The chant no longer echoes in the rafters, and the fire, once full of motion and story, has softened to embers. And so we come to this hush, not an end, but a turning inward. For when a scroll is read to its final line, its lesson does not vanish. It lingers, like incense trailing through an open door, like a breath held between words. There is a silence that follows truth. Not the silence of absence, but of presence too deep for sound. That is where we are now. You have heard of souls that walk in sleep, of shamans who speak with fire, of dreams that part the veil. But these are not stories for forgetting. They are seeds, old truths wrapped in smoke and thread, waiting to be planted in the soil of your own stillness. The wise say, do not carry a sword when a whisper will suffice. Do not speak when silence can hold more. And when parting comes, let it be like the falling of pine needles, soft, inevitable, without complaint. There is dignity in restraint, a beauty in not grasping. To guide a soul and not cling, to light a fire and then let it die, is the mark of those who have walked far enough to know where the path ends and where it begins again. The spirits do not ask for noise, only attention, only breath. And you, who have listened with patience, who have sat through mist and morning, through thread and chant, you are now a bearer of this scroll, not to display, but to remember, not to explain, but to live. For the scroll does not end here. It unrolls quietly beneath your own footsteps. Every time you offer a word gently, every time you hold a silence instead of speaking, you write another line. And when you bow to the unseen, when you sweep a room not for dust, but for memory, you call the ancestors near, just as they were called in the hut, by the fire, in the breath between chants. Let this final ember be your light in the dark, not bright, but steady. Let the dream carry you, not as a tale, but as a teaching. Somewhere, far in the hills, a bell tolls once, low, certain, a sound to close the breath, a sound to begin the walk, and as the mist gathers at the edge of the trees, a figure bows, not to the past, but to the weight of its gift, and steps, softly, into the silence. The scroll returns to its resting place, folded not with finality, but with care. Its ink may pale over time, but memory breathes beyond the page. What we witnessed tonight was not just history, but something quieter, a breath left suspended in wind. Let it stay with you, gently. No need to hold it tightly. Close your eyes if you wish. The tale is done, but the peace remains.